The first thing people notice when they start trying to lose weight isn't the number on the scale, it's the noise, the constant thinking about food, the guilt after eating something bad, the pressure to be perfect, and somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, eating stops feeling natural. That's exactly where I was. I used to think weight loss had to feel extreme. Tiny meals, endless cardio, cutting out every food I loved, starting over every Monday after messing up over the weekend. It felt like a cycle that never really ended, and the more complicated I made it, the harder it became to stay consistent. But eventually, something changed. I stopped chasing fast results and started building meals I could actually live with. Meals that kept me full, meals that gave me energy, meals that didn't feel like punishment. And strangely enough, that's when everything finally started moving in the right direction. So today, I want to show you exactly what I eat in a day for weight loss. Not a crash diet, not a trendy cleanse, just realistic food, simple habits, and the small choices that made the biggest difference over time. And honestly, some of these meals might surprise you. The day usually starts before I'm even fully awake. There's this moment in the morning where your brain immediately wants comfort. Something sugary, something quick. Especially if you slept badly or stayed up too late the night before. That used to be the moment where my entire day would go off track. I'd grab something processed, feel hungry again an hour later, then spend the rest of the day chasing cravings. So now I approach mornings differently. I don't try to earn my food, and I don't skip breakfast hoping it'll magically speed things up. I focus on balance first. The very first thing I do is drink water. Nothing complicated, no miracle detox ingredients, just water. Sometimes cold, sometimes warm depending on the weather, but that simple habit changed more than I expected. A lot of the time, what felt like hunger was really just dehydration or exhaustion. After that comes breakfast, and this is probably the most important meal for me mentally because it sets the tone for everything that follows. Most mornings I make a high protein breakfast bowl. I'll use eggs as the base because they keep me full longer than almost anything else. I cook them slowly, usually with spinach, onions, and mushrooms. Sometimes I add avocado on the side. Sometimes I pair it with toast. And yes, real toast. Not the sad kind that tastes like cardboard. That was another mindset shift for me. I stopped trying to make every meal as low calorie as possible and started trying to make meals satisfying enough that I wouldn't spend the next several hours thinking about snacks. Because if your breakfast leaves you hungry and miserable, your willpower eventually runs out. And something interesting happened once I started eating enough protein in the morning. My cravings became quieter. I didn't feel that desperate need to constantly snack. I had more stable energy. Even my mood felt different. Some mornings, especially when I'm busy, I'll make a smoothie instead. But I learned the hard way that not all smoothies are actually filling. For the longest time, I was basically drinking dessert and pretending it was healthy. Now I build smoothies differently. I add protein, fruit, something with fiber, and something that gives texture and richness so it actually feels like a meal. It tastes good, keeps me full, and doesn't leave me crashing an hour later. And one thing I no longer do is label foods as good or bad. That mentality kept me trapped for years. The second you tell yourself a food is forbidden, it suddenly becomes all you can think about. Then eventually you eat it anyway, feel guilty, and spiral into overeating because you already ruined the day. I know a lot of people watching this have probably experienced that exact cycle. So instead of perfection, I started focusing on consistency. That means breakfast isn't about punishment. It's about creating stability. After breakfast, I usually go for a walk if I have time. Nothing intense, just movement. I used to believe exercise only counted if I was exhausted afterward, but sustainable weight loss became much easier once I stopped treating fitness like a punishment for eating. Walking helps clear my mind, it helps digestion, it improves my energy, and honestly, it helps me reconnect with myself before the stress of the day starts building. Then comes the part of the day where things used to get dangerous for me. Late morning cravings. This is where boredom eating would usually kick in. Not actual hunger, just habit. I'd open the fridge, stare into it like the answer to life was hidden behind the yogurt, then grab random snacks without even thinking. Now I pause first. Sometimes I'm genuinely hungry, and if I am, I eat something. That part matters. Ignoring hunger usually backfires later, but instead of reaching for whatever is easiest, I try to choose snacks that actually satisfy me. Greek yogurt with fruit is one of my favorites because it feels sweet without turning into a sugar overload. Sometimes I'll have nuts, sometimes rice cakes with peanut butter, sometimes leftovers from the night before. And yes, sometimes I eat something purely because I enjoy it. That's important too. One of the biggest mistakes people make during weight loss is creating a routine so restrictive that real life eventually destroys it. If your plan only works in perfect conditions, it probably won't last very long. Life gets stressful, plans change, cravings happen, social events happen. Your routine has to survive real life. By lunchtime, I'm usually ready for something more substantial. This meal changed a lot over time because I used to either skip lunch completely or eat something massive because I was starving by then. Neither approach worked. Now lunch is built around one simple idea: volume and balance. I want a plate that looks full and feels satisfying without making me feel sluggish afterward. A typical lunch for me might be grilled chicken with rice and vegetables, or a large salad with protein and a flavorful dressing that actually tastes good. That last part matters more than people admit. Healthy food doesn't need to taste boring. In fact, the more enjoyable your meals are, the easier consistency becomes. I use seasoning, I use sauces in moderation, I make food that feels comforting instead of clinical. Because if every meal feels emotionally empty, eventually your brain starts searching for satisfaction elsewhere. And here's something nobody talks about enough during weight loss: emotional hunger. Sometimes you're not hungry for food. You're hungry for comfort, for distraction, for relief after a stressful day. Food becomes tied to emotion in ways we don't always notice. Learning that changed everything for me. I started asking myself simple questions before eating. Am I physically hungry? Or am I overwhelmed, tired, anxious, bored, lonely, or stressed? And sometimes the answer really was stress. That awareness alone helped me break habits I thought I'd never escape. But here's the thing: weight loss didn't suddenly become easy after that realization. There were still hard days. Days where cravings hit out of nowhere. Days where motivation disappeared completely. And this is the part most transformation videos skip: the middle. Not the exciting beginning where you feel motivated. Not the dramatic ending where everything looks perfect. The middle is where most people quit. Because progress starts slowing down. The excitement fades. Your old habits start whispering to you again. That's why what happens next in my day matters so much. Afternoons used to be my weakest point. That little energy crash after lunch would hit, and suddenly all I wanted was sugar or caffeine or both. I convinced myself I needed it to stay productive, but honestly, most of the time I was just tired from poor habits. So I started paying attention to patterns. When I slept better, my cravings improved. When I drank enough water, my energy improved. When I ate balanced meals earlier in the day, the afternoon crash became less intense. That doesn't mean I never have treats anymore. I absolutely do, but now they fit into my life instead of controlling it. Sometimes in the afternoon, I'll have coffee and a small snack. Sometimes dark chocolate. Sometimes popcorn while working. The difference is that now I eat those things intentionally instead of emotionally spiraling through an entire pantry without realizing it. And honestly, intentional eating feels freeing. Because weight loss stopped being about fighting myself all day. It became about understanding myself better. There was also another unexpected change during this journey. My relationship with hunger completely shifted. I used to panic anytime I felt hungry, like hunger automatically meant failure or deprivation. But hunger is just communication. It doesn't need to trigger fear. Some hunger before meals is normal. What I try to avoid now is the extreme kind of hunger that leads to overeating later. That's usually where impulsive decisions happen. So by the time dinner comes around, I'm not walking into the kitchen desperate and exhausted anymore. Dinner is probably my favorite meal because it's the one that feels the most comforting. It's where I slow down and actually enjoy food. And surprisingly, dinner became healthier once I stopped trying to make it diet food. I still eat things like pasta, tacos, burgers, and rice dishes. The difference is in the portions, the ingredients, and the balance around them. For example, if I'm craving pasta, I'll pair it with protein and vegetables so the meal feels more complete. If I want burgers, I'll make them at home with sides that leave me satisfied instead of sluggish. Weight loss became sustainable once I stopped believing I had to erase every food I loved. Because realistically, if you hate the process, you'll probably hate maintaining the result too. And maintenance matters more than temporary success. That realization took me a long time to understand. There was a period where I kept losing and gaining the same weight over and over because everything I tried was temporary. Temporary rules, temporary restrictions, temporary motivation. But sustainable habits changed the entire game. And here's the secondary hook most people don't expect. The biggest transformation wasn't physical, it was mental. The confidence that comes from trusting yourself again is hard to describe until you experience it. Not because you followed a perfect routine, but because you proved to yourself that you could stay consistent even after imperfect days. That changes you. Because there will always be birthdays, vacations, holidays, stressful weeks, and emotional moments. Real life never pauses to make weight loss easier. So the goal stopped being perfection. The goal became resilience. After dinner, evenings are where I'm most intentional now because nighttime snacking used to completely destroy my progress without me realizing it. I'd tell myself I was having just a little something, and somehow that turned into endless grazing while watching videos or scrolling on my phone. Mindless eating is powerful because you barely register it while it's happening, so I started creating small boundaries that didn't feel extreme. Sometimes I make tea after dinner because it signals to my brain that eating time is winding down. Sometimes I brush my teeth earlier. Sometimes I simply sit with the craving for a few minutes instead of reacting immediately. And surprisingly, cravings often pass faster than expected when you don't instantly obey them. But I also stopped trying to win every battle through discipline alone. Environment matters. If the only snacks in your house are foods you struggle to control around, that becomes exhausting. So I try to keep options available that support my goals without making me feel restricted. That balance matters more than most people realize. And there's another piece of this journey that almost nobody talks about enough: the emotional weight people carry while trying to lose physical weight. So many people are battling shame while trying to improve themselves. Shame about past attempts, shame about their bodies, shame about not progressing fast enough. I carried that too, but shame rarely creates lasting change. It usually creates secrecy, isolation, and burnout. What finally helped me was learning to approach the process with patience instead of punishment. That doesn't mean making excuses. It means understanding that sustainable change takes time. There were weeks where the scale barely moved even though I was doing everything right. Weeks where I felt frustrated. Weeks where old insecurities came rushing back. But consistency compounds quietly. A lot of progress happens before you can visibly see it. Your habits improve first. Then your energy changes. Then your confidence changes. Then eventually, your body follows. And somewhere along the way, you realize the journey stopped being only about weight loss. It became about building a lifestyle that supports your mental and physical health at the same time. That's why I don't believe in all or nothing thinking anymore. One meal doesn't ruin your progress. One bad day doesn't erase your effort. And one setback doesn't mean you failed. The people who succeed long-term usually aren't the people who were perfect. They're the people who kept going after imperfect moments. That perspective changed everything for me. Now when I look at what I eat in a day, I don't see rules. I see structure. I see balance. I see meals that fuel me without controlling my life. And honestly, that freedom feels better than any quick result ever did. Because at the end of the day, weight loss is deeply personal. Different foods work for different people. Different schedules, cultures, lifestyles, and preferences all matter. What changed my life might look completely different for someone else. But the principle stays the same. Find habits you can repeat. Build meals you genuinely enjoy. Focus on consistency over intensity, and give yourself enough patience to grow into the process instead of trying to force overnight transformation. The truth is, most people already know what healthy eating looks like. The difficult part is building a relationship with food that feels sustainable emotionally, not just physically. That takes honesty, it takes self-awareness, and sometimes it takes unlearning years of guilt around eating. But once you start making peace with the process, everything begins to feel lighter. Not just your body, your mind too. And maybe that's the final thing I want to leave you with today. Weight loss is not just about becoming smaller, it's about becoming stronger in the quiet moments nobody sees. The moment you choose balance instead of extremes. The moment you keep going after a difficult week. The moment you stop punishing yourself and start taking care of yourself instead. Those moments matter more than people realize. So if you're currently struggling with your routine, if you feel stuck, frustrated, or exhausted by starting over again and again, know that progress doesn't always look dramatic at first. Sometimes it looks like drinking more water. Sometimes it looks like cooking at home more often. Sometimes it looks like choosing consistency over perfection for the very first time. And sometimes, that small shift becomes the beginning of an entirely different life. If this video connected with you in any way, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely love to hear about your own journey, your struggles, or the habits that have helped you most. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more realistic health and lifestyle content that keeps things honest, balanced, and sustainable.